Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Lisa Murphy is here. Yay, we haven't
I
recorded.
finally got invited back.
You are always invited. And you know that.
I know, I was being a
You
brat.
finally have some time in your
I did.
jet-setting rock star life.
Well, and gotta carve room out for you first, right? That's my priority.
Excellent. That's all I've ever wanted.
Well, we could just hang up now then.
Yeah, okay, end of episode. No, the people need you. The people want to hear you.
Thank you. And I enjoy talking with you and the people.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we've already been chatting for a while before I hit record. But anyway, so Lisa and I finally have some time to record together. And on this episode, so we were both just at the NAEYC conference in Nashville a few weeks ago, although when this comes out, it may be longer.
Yeah.
But, at the time of recording, it was a few weeks ago. I spent a lot of time in the vendor hall, or the Expo as they called it. Mostly just because that's where I was finding all the people I wanted to see and socialize with. And I was getting, books at all the booths. But so you post, as you always do when you go to something like this, you kind of unpack the sessions you went to on your Ooey Gooey Facebook page. And so you had some unpacking of the vendor stuff too. And you're telling me that people said, unpack this with Heather. So that's our quote. Unpack this with Heather.
Unpack this with Heather. And it was interesting because it was kind of a, hey, in case you're new, it wasn't even a sharing of the highlights of a session. It was more of just that reminder that if you're new, take a break. It's not a race. You don't need to be at every single session. There's no, you didn't win conferencing, because you sat through all of your sessions. And at the vendor hall, I said it can be very overwhelming. And then in parentheses, I kind of quipped, or underwhelming. And quite a few of the readers locked on that, and they were like, what do you mean by underwhelming? And I was, as I like to say, that's a whole different workshop, right? That's
right. Yes. For me, it's overwhelming in like a sensory perspective, and an activity perspective, but underwhelming for me in terms of
human connection
and
but I want to clarify that because you and this was your first time at NAEYC, right? That's not a big secret or anything like that. So the human connection that you were receiving there, I agree with that piece of it, right? That is where you run into the people that you haven't seen in a minute, or, the people, it's just sometimes easier to say, meet me at the so-and-so booth, just as a landmark, right? Like Disneyland, meet me at the train. and so I would agree with the human connection piece there
for that part of it,
where my comment is the lack of human connection with the vendors. And I think an underwhelmingness of interpersonal connection with the big corporate vendors. And I don't know if really underwhelming is the proper word to capture that, but I really do believe that and I feel like I sound a little bit like, oh my God, I've been going for 50 years. And vendors these days. And so I don't want to sound like that, because that's not really the spirit. It's just, I really do. And I did write in my evaluation to NAEYC that did come in. I did capture this, and I kicked myself because it wasn't until after I hit send that I was like, damn it, I should have copied and pasted my actual language, of what I said. Is that, the days of, and I get, and what I need to lead with, especially for some of your listeners who maybe don't have who know who I am a businesswoman. I 100% get and understand that the fee that Creative Curriculum and Kaplan and Lakeshore and Discount and all of those, I get that they keep the conference going, right? Their willingness to pay a big chunk of change is what keeps the doors open. However, I think the scale has tipped to where you only see representation from the big guys, the big guns. And I was saddened this year, and this is the underwhelming piece. I was saddened by, you didn't walk by. Hugh Hanley wasn't there to teach you a new finger play song.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Dr. Drew wasn't there he was there as a speaker, but to come play with the blocks. Let's have a little chat. And then the few, I could count on one hand the number of what appeared to be a mom and pop kind of a vibe of a vendor. They had that hustle vibe to them, and not necessarily, I think, that understanding of why many of us go to that, for the child connection. How is this in the highest and best interest for the children? I get frustrated because most of the people walking through those vendor halls they're frontline people. They're frontline changing diapers, wiping noses. They are not in any position to be making decisions, right? Those level of purchasing,
or ordering that kind of big stuff.
Ordering that, right? And so, they might be fun to chat with, and maybe they'll go back and tell their director that they were intrigued by this product, or whatnot. So it might lead to an after sale for that big company. But I found myself wondering what kind of impression is being made for the brand new people walking through the hall. And go on, go.
Oh, I just made 2 notes of things based on what you're talking about there. One is, how every conference you go to, you can kind of see a theme in what people are bringing away from the vendor hall. Like everybody has this one toy or whatever. And this year it was like a pointing wand that I saw everybody have, and it could double as a stylus on a smart board. And that's what
like
everybody
one of those
was
old, long, like a
pointer,
for the calendar to tap the days and stuff like that. Oh, interesting.
That for me was sort of a metaphor of what makes me so uncomfortable about the vendor hall, and about, if I'm honest, about NAEYC stuff in general right now, is that it's focused on that top-down didactic, I will deliver content to you, instead of that understanding of child development and what they need at these ages and what early learning really looks like. And I just, people were so excited about those. They were talking, they were playing, they were sending their friends in to get them. And, if what it is a pointer to give you permission to talk, or a smartboard stylus, then that's not a super active way for children to be involved. And so that part was sort of disheartening. But if you're talking about, as you were talking about the frontline first, new teachers or whatever, and I know I've mentioned this to you, and I didn't flesh it out enough, but whenever I'm in a vendor hall now of any kind, of course I remember when I was excited about all that stuff, and the we make jokes about the denim Apple
the jumpers,
applique, which I'd probably still wear if I'm being honest, but getting excited about those t-shirts that say, I'm an important teacher or whatever. But we can kind of connect it to, or what I would like to do sometime more intentionally, is connect it to Lily and Kaz's stages of teacher development. And that first one is survival. They're just trying to get through their work. And I think about that person going into that vendor hall.
So a pointer
everything marketed as everything marketed as either that adult-led teaching, or here's a management thing. Here's a way that I can help you survive your day by managing the group. And that I think is either, for a brand new person, going to be really overwhelming and hard to think about, or like desperate clinging to anything that promises that
the cute guy in the booth says
exactly
make everything better.
Once they've had me all dancing and singing along and my endorphins are pumping, what can I buy now that you promise will help me manage my group?
Exactly. And I still think that's a good idea. And maybe we need to write it down somewhere important. And assuming that we're both in Anaheim next year, maybe actually do a podcast from there, going through those stages. And look, it sounds like it's a research. I mean, we could write an article on this, right? That you could actually find people who are willing to participate, who self-identify at those certain stages of their own teacher development, and see how they responded to the same aisle, right? You couldn't got to control as many variables as possible, right? So everybody's going to walk down this one aisle, and how did you all see what was there, and is there potentially a correlation? Dude, that's a dissertation.
Okay, but I just decided
that
I'm not doing a PhD, so it's going to
Oh,
have to
you
be
did?
your dissertation. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe
I mean, unless someone
I
wants to
have a
pay
book.
for it and I can do it without moving.
I have a notebook of dissertation
Yeah.
ideas. That
Yeah.
would be a fun podcast
Yeah.
just to go through it.
Lisa's dissertation ideas.
Meanwhile, we've written a dissertation about trying to decide a dissertation topic, but I digress. But
Yes,
no,
anyway.
and we've joked about it even with some of the people in Indiana at the IAYC conferences. You know, you can kind of tell that first year, right? And we all were that person like, oh my
Right.
God, you're giving away a wagon. I need the wagon because
Yeah.
anything that anybody's handing out to me, I'm going to go get. And I think I'm just at that point where, you know, I wonder, because I am focused lately on who's coming up the pipeline and who is next and what is the message and what's their vibe and what are they learning from NAEYC and what is NAEYC to some degree saying is important versus isn't important. And, you know, if I've got nothing else except, you know, this organization, especially this last year, I really locked and loaded on the fact that 53% of the people who were in attendance were first timers.
Wow, I didn't even see that number.
Yeah, 53%, first time ever at a conference, and you're like, wow. Okay, so what was your takeaway from that? I mean, and I think back, and again, you're filtering it only really probably through my own experience and my own opinion and all of that stuff.
Sure.
But that's where I learned, like way back in the day, like, I mean, I fell in love with science by not buying stuff from Steve Spangler, but watching his enthusiasm at his booth, right? You see people start going, what? I could do that. Now, granted, I'm not saying to buy stuff or not buy stuff, but I'm just saying that interpersonal connection, that's where I learned about different college programs so when I started looking for my master's, like I had, you know, a memory of these people that you were, you know, they weren't there to hustle me and take my money. They were there to answer some of my questions. And that's where I originally met people who now are members of their associations, but they had the smallest booth as they could possibly purchase. And they were standing there with a very like handwritten banner that says, you know, our next conference is in Istanbul. And you're like, tell me about that. You know? And now years later, you know, you've developed professional relationships with this. And I just feel that it's become, the expo has become such a monster that there isn't room for that the little guys have been pushed out to some degree. And, you know, to circle a little bit back to just the caring and the interhuman piece of it, and Carol Garbodin Murray's work and all of our works on caring and connection. It's like, I just feel like the heart has been commercialized out of it. And that's that feeling that now I've, you know, been ranting about for 10 minutes, that in a nutshell, that's what I meant when I typed underwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the flip side too, right? And if one of my frustrations was that it all seemed to be, or the big booths, the big things, the places I saw crowds were all places that looked teachery, felt teachery or whatever. And, you know, that bothers me because I think children need to be active and playing or whatever. It would be really hard to set up an expo booth that was just about child-led play. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how it could be performative and draw people in. So I kind of get it. That if your job is to bring attention to your products. But
it's like,
there has to be something. Yeah.
How do you dance with the fact that at the end of the day, you do have a product to sell, right? As we all do,
right? Absolutely.
To some degree, we have a product to sell. But how do you dance that dance without negating your own mission statement, right? So, you know, and I can't speak for the bigger corporations, but you know, how would you set up a booth that reinforced or was some kind of visual representation of open-ended, true child-directed, long periods of free time kind of play? You know, what would that look like, and how much space would you need? You know, and it would almost, to me, I'm thinking it would be like you'd almost need a workshop room
Yes. Like a sort of little mini lab school
like a
during the
lab
conference.
school,
Yeah.
right? Right. We need 300 square feet
And a busload
and
of 3-year-olds.
a water source in the Omni.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just, I mean, of course, I just keep going back to this. I remember the excitement of it when I was new. And I guess I don't want to come across as, if you bought into any of this, I have a real problem with you as
I would hope
as an early childhood
hearing that.
person.
And if they did, they already turned us off. So they
Right.
didn't get a
So they
chance
didn't even hear my
hear us-
caveat. But
hear our caveat there.
but I think framing it in terms of a teacher's developmental stage.
I think that's more constructive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been really thinking lately, and I should have grabbed it, but I didn't know we were gonna come around here. I have an art piece in one of my rooms that, and I'm grossly paraphrasing, it says something like within every answer or within every solution is an answer and like a call to action or something like that. Like, yeah, we can sit around and rant about stuff like that, but then what would be the next step? How do you make it more than just a rant? How do you turn it into something maybe a little bit more constructive and honoring the fact that, you know, we all were there. Right. I remember coming home with, you'd have to put a suitcase inside of the suitcase just for all the stuff that you thought you needed when you were all caught up in everything.
I just sent my extra stuff home from the UPS store, which was conveniently located in the conference center.
Conveniently located. Yeah. And I always left with books, you know, books.
That's what mine were.
So hundreds and hundreds of pounds of books, but I mean, I'm pretty confident that your listeners aren't gonna think that is something that's being said. I think one of the things that you're good about is acknowledging that we've all been there, but maybe the slice of the pie that you join us maybe for this podcast episode, you know, there or that one workshop that you or I delivered, you don't necessarily see that. Like in a 75-minute session, there isn't often time for me to go back and let you know that
what I used to be.
Nobody woke up like this. You know, we all had the think about it chair, the sexy timeout chair. Like, and we've talked about that hundreds of times in previous episodes too. But I worry. I still worry that as an overarching professional association, if somebody was just transported into the vendor hall, what would their takeaway be for what the organization really stands for?
One thing, and again, from a marketing perspective, a sales perspective, I know why this isn't going to happen. But what I kept thinking was, what if the big recognizable brand names with their loud songs and their music and their whatever they were doing were in the back? So to get there, you had to kind of go by all these other smaller kinds of, maybe you said there weren't a lot of the mom and pop, but there were smaller companies and there were some schools, some colleges represented. If you had to walk through those at least to get to the show in the back of the space, that would have also been less like of a sensory assault for me as I walked through those doors, and it was immediately someone yelling a song at me through the microphone.
What's that book? Too Loud, Too Fast, Too Bright, Too Tight. Like that's every time I walked in the door, that's like, what happened?
Oh yeah. I did really love, they had, I can't remember whose booth it was or whose space it was, but they had not even singing children's songs, just like a local woman playing with her guitar, doing acoustic live music the whole time when she wasn't overwhelmed. That's not the word I want, but when the other booth's music wasn't drowning her out, I guess is what I'm saying. But that was fun.
Yeah. So I mean, no real takeaway or punchline here, but I felt one of how do I say this? And also remembering that for a lot of your folks, it's auditory, so they don't see me thinking, right? They might not visually have that cue. Like, we
need thinking music or something.
I like to wait. Like one of the things that I appreciate about the evaluation is that I wasn't like hounded to do it as I
Right
was
away.
walking out
Yeah.
the door, because I
Yeah.
probably would have been a little bit more not as reflective.
Yeah.
But knowing that it had come a few days later, and I had already been thinking about it, because in my brain I was like, okay, is there an article in here? You know, is this more than just some very basic feedback? And so I was glad that I was able to give them the feedback. I don't think it's enough to be like an article. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But
Yeah.
it really, to me, it was more, now this many weeks later, it's more of that reminder or not a reminder, because I don't think I need a reminder to stay the course in
Yeah.
regard to the importance of relationships and things like that. But maybe it was more of a reminder that we might need to continue to be vocal about it, because some of the other messages that folks in our profession are receiving might not be as clear
Right.
to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, I mean, at the end of the day, that you don't need anything in that hall except our books. That's
Except
it. That's
the books.
except
Yes.
my books.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe mine one year.
Well, that's what I was saying. Except our books. That's all. That's the only thing you need. But I mean, and I know that sounds kind of silly, but you know, you don't.
Yeah.
You know, and how many times have we wrapped up a session by reminding people that, you know, we're not telling you not to go shopping,
Right.
but you do need to have a healthy handle on the fact that, you know, we drank the Kool-Aid, I think, for too long of a time as a profession.
Yep.
That the stuff in the catalog was what made it a good, high quality program, and you know, we all know that's not true.
Right. But
all.
there are, even if we as frontline, you know, pretending I'm still a frontline, I'm not anymore, but even as, I guess, global we frontline people working with children every day. And now I just talked myself out of my thought. Even if we know that they don't need all of those things to be quality, the stakeholders, the funders, the policymakers, the families sometimes do still see that.
Need that reminder, like a direct in your face reminder.
Yeah.
That all of this could go away.
Yeah.
All of this stuff.
Yeah. We just have to be skilled enough and confident enough to help them see that.
And okay. Oh, I love where this is going.
Okay, good.
Give me a second to see if I can articulate what's in my head. I think the more confident and the stronger you get in your belief system.
Yeah.
And your buy-in to child-directed free play, and that's enough, which is a whole other conversation. The more I think it's easier to not just say you don't need that $500 water table, but you trust yourself within the space that you don't need the stuff as like a crutch.
Yeah.
Does that come out clear? Like they're training wheels.
Yeah.
You know, and like, sure, I believe very strongly that there's a dozen things in that quote unquote should be available in the space, the bones, as I like to call them.
In fact, you've written about it.
I have the bones. But I really do believe that if all of that went away and you had internalized some stories, some songs, some games, you know, that all that stuff that you could do that doesn't require stuff. I think it might be easier to get on that soapbox and be like, you don't need any of this. You might want it.
So, you know, I can't remember if I just talked about this in a class or if this is when I was recording with Mike Huber and Stacy Benge the other day when we talked about part of this. Oh no, never mind. It was the Saturday morning early childhood coffee chat thing that I've been doing.
So circle back, because somebody's going to be like, what was she thinking about?
Yeah, I've got it. I'm ready. We were talking about this idea that you need the catalog stuff to be quality. And part of that comes from like your licensing regulations might say, I was just going to say that, yep. But they might say you need a certain number of materials in these domains and
identifiable like interest areas
in Indiana. Yeah. Interest areas. In Indiana, the paths to quality, the QRS system, says, I think it's getting updated right now, but it says right now, or it currently says you have to have 3 to 5 materials for science, 3 to 5 math materials. And if we don't if we aren't able, like if we don't understand what science is in this age group or what math really is in this age group, of course we're going to rely on a catalog that has a section that says these are math things. These are science things. And so like if I were in a classroom now and a paths to quality person was coming in to do the checklist, I could show them how, you know, my loose parts or things that aren't necessarily from that section of the catalog, my schema stuff, you know, is 3 to 5. Like I have, here's my 3 to 5 math things. They don't look like the catalog section, but it's still here. You know what I mean? I feel like, and that's kind of what you were talking about. We have to be confident enough in what we believe about how children learn to be able to have those conversations with the
and I really
don't see it yet.
I think confidence, and you know, usually this time of year, so again, for listeners, when we're recording right now is December-ish. So I don't have any gigs. I'm not traveling anywhere for probably 6 to 7 weeks. So this is my reflection time. And one of the things that I try and be diligent about every single December is figuring out, you know, what's the theme going to be for next year? And, you know, I have no way of knowing, but it's still backwards planning. So just for those of you who are looking for like a tip off of being inconsistent, based on this year, moving forward, what is something that I want to be extra mindful of making sure I'm reminding people about? And one of the themes that came up all year was the confidence piece, which is exactly what you were just talking about. And not everybody starts down the path of this career with that level of confidence. As you know, most of us, again, I speak for myself, we aged into it, we experienced into it, of reaching that point where, you know, where you feel confident enough to say that when we're breathing, it's science. Right? When we poop and pee,
I was just gonna
science. Say. You know, but you know, you age into becoming more okay with looking at
the quality rater comes in and says, "Show me your science," and I take them to the bathroom.
Or you show them the snack, you know, or the plant that's growing outside the door. And how do we make sure that the confidence isn't coming off as snarky?
Right. That's my problem, as you know. That will surprise few. Say that to do it without the snark is an ongoing learning journey for me.
Right. And I'm always quick to say, well, you know, can you identify the 3 things in the classroom? Right. Like putting it back. And I think that's a little piece to circle back a little bit to the vendor hall piece. Is, you know, I'd be hard pressed, and I might be making a very grossly inaccurate statement right now, and I will take it back if need be. But I would love to somehow get a handle on how much actual child development knowledge and understanding the folks who are hawking
the sales
all that
people
crap
have
actually have. You know. But but they still have the confidence.
They do.
Right. But maybe in a different department.
That's an interesting piece of it.
The confidence.
I wonder now too. Yeah, for sure. But I mean, that comes back to relationships, right? Because you have to feel safe, I think, with the person you're talking to.
I'll push back on that.
You don't think?
I don't think so. I think the relationship in that pace, this is going to sound ultra philosophical.
That's cool.
With yourself. Is with yourself.
Okay.
If I know that with what's coming out of my mouth is grounded in evidence and research, and not an opinion, but it's factual. To some degree, I don't need a relationship with you, but I need to know that what I tell you and how I phrase it might impact whether or not you're going to listen to me again. That you're going to ask me follow-up questions, right? So that old adage of it's not what I say, it's how I say it.
Okay.
But if that layer of confidence to initially even say it isn't there, then I think that's where we get into trouble, is that the confidence level, I would say, of many of the people in our profession could use an infusion, an elevation. right? So somebody comes in, maybe questions us, has a clipboard, has a name tag, is in some perceived position of authority. And instead of saying what needs to be said in a professional manner, we either clam up, don't say anything, we get scared, and then that person leaves with a very inaccurate understanding of our knowledge level.
Yeah. Ooh,
so now
there's a parallel here to teaching young children too.
Right. So then this person thinks, I don't know what the hell's going on. And so of course they go back to their office and make 19 more policies because they think they need to micromanage because we're not stepping up to the plate and sharing what we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's your parallel? Articulate
well, just
that.
like if our teachers are presenting in that kind of same I'm the expert, I'm the authority, I'm in charge of what is important here, and then the children aren't really being heard or seen, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. We're not really seeing the competence of that child because of this barrier of perceived authority.
And so the kid says nothing.
So we set up rules and assessments, and you teach harder. Yeah.
Well,
that was fun.
Same kind of thing. Yes, it was. I love that kind of stuff. I remember distinctly one day, and it was many, many years ago. It was during a workshop where I don't know if this happens to you, when I'll be doing a workshop, and all of a sudden I will hear something in my head that I realize I need to say out loud, and it often will lead to a big like aha in regard to the presentation. And one of the teachers was talking about how frustrating it is when you say go play to the children, and then they're like, well, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What is it time for me to do? And is it time for me to, and they're like, oh my God, just go play. And I'm like, and but we're telling you to go teach, go teach. And you're like, well, what do you want me to teach? And how do you want me to teach? And how long do I have to teach? It's the same exact thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then we sigh, oh, children don't know how to play anymore.
Well, to that specifically, I always tell people, I always tell people they do. They're just not as used to that word as you and I were. They haven't really grown up with that word. So you'll often, it's like you have to wolf the kids.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to go over to the block area and take some blocks off the shelf, and then we're going to stack them up or design them or do. Now that means play with the blocks, but they don't have a framework for what the opportunities embedded within that word might be.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. Write that down. That was a good one. It was. Not aware of the opportunities.
Need a transcript of this
that word. Ooh.
Yeah. Good one, Lisa. Good one.
Cool. Okay, I'm out. Bye. No, I'm
Ended on a high note.
Always.
Let's see. What else? Anything else about the vendor hall, since that's where we started?
Expo hall. That to death. You know, like I always try to be clear, not clear, try to be clear, but I like to let people know, like, do you have a really big point you're building up to, or is it kind of like, nope, just this, just this, just something to think about.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't have to go anywhere else right now.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it might not ever, and that's okay. And I started calling them the half-baked thoughts. And one of the things I like about it now, I'm more comfortable putting the half-baked thoughts out there, is that because I used to always would second guess that, be like, oh, it's not all the way through, like
someone's gonna find a hole.
But now it's like, you know what, I like putting out the half-baked thoughts, because then sometimes people will get in touch with you and help you bring that half-baked thought to a full thought, and that's kind of fun.
Well, as always, this was delightful.
It's always delightful.
Wrap it up, because we could keep going. Also, I have a question I want to ask you, and I'm afraid I'll forget if we don't just wrap up
ask
recording.
It right now.
No, I'm going to ask you off mic.
Now everybody's all intrigued and wants to know what the question
everybody
was.
Can guess. Put your guess in the comments. No, it's just a research question. Okay. So thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you. Nice
Thanks,
to be
Lisa.
here.
Bye.